Hey, what's up everybody? Today I've got a little bit of a short one for you. I'm going to be installing an SV650 shock into my KX65 Supermoto. So right here we have a rear shock from a second generation SV650 that's anywhere from 2003 to 2012. And I also have the stock shock from the KX65 here. Other than the stiffer spring, the biggest difference between these two is the top mounting point for the SV650 shock is a little bit thicker than the KX65's. The lower portion is pretty similar, although the SV650 is actually a little bit thinner than the KX65. So before we get to installing this, there is a modification you need to do to your frame, and that is to remove the threaded portion that sticks into the cavity for the top shock mount. This will provide enough clearance for the SV650 shock to fit in there. We're going to be reusing the hardware from our KX65 shock for this, with the addition of a couple spacers. These are just washers that I've got. For the top shock mount, I needed about 2 millimeters to make up the difference in there. For the lower shock mount, I needed about 3.2 millimeters on each side. Next, we're going to drop the SV650 shock down onto the linkage. And we're going to carefully maneuver our washers in there while we get the bolt in. This is a very fiddly job. Ideally, these would be solid spacers. I don't have a lathe yet. That's something I would love to have for the future. But these washers will work just fine for now. It's a little bit fiddly getting them in there, but you're not going to be doing this all that often, so it shouldn't be too bad. So the bottom shock mount for the SV650 has a threaded hole, and the bolt will thread right into it. I also put the lock nut onto the outside of that just to catch a few more threads. For the top mount, I only needed one spacer to make up the difference that I needed, and then threaded a bolt in. So for my weight, the best preload setting that I found was one notch down from the end on the adjuster. I just did this using a screwdriver because I didn't have the shock adjustment tool that you usually get with the SV650 toolkit, but it worked just fine. I weigh about 200 pounds, and that's before gear, and this works out pretty well for me on my other bike. And there you have it. You've got your SV650 shock installed on your KX65, and you've maintained your airbox. With the ZX6 shock, you lose your airbox and you need to run a pod filter. With the SV650 shock, you get to keep your airbox and everything's nice and tidy in there. Thanks for hanging out with me in the garage, and I'll see you on the next one.